Shell, Exxon, BP, they're all in the market trying to figure out how do we buy this, because we know this is where it's going. This has been around for about 20 years, but it was wishy-washy. You know, who certified these credits? What type of projects were they? And this is all coming to now a conclusion after 20 years in something called Article 6, that at COP26 in Glasgow, which, you know, the name of the city is almost ironic that it's the dear green place, that what the Paris Accord and, you know, COP21 in Paris in 2015, all these promises that the governments made, now in 2021 in Glasgow, they're going to be legislated, they're going to become law.
What does COP mean?
So it's the climate organization participation of every country. Over 195 countries have signed on to this, and it started actually from COP21 in 1996 with the Kyoto Protocol in Japan. That was the first time. With COP26 in Glasgow, it's about how do we legislate this and make it law. And it's not just the politicians talking now. You're looking at the governments making this law. The UK has already announced that they're going to legislate this. They're going to make it law. So BP, the old British Petroleum Company, they did an internal document report. And this is so key. Like, this is what, you know, when people talk about where the puck is going, where the market is going, BP announced openly that if they just take $100 per ton, and everybody knows it's going a lot higher. The government's already legislated in Canada $170 per ton minimum. If you take 100, so their internal documents was like, okay, let's take the midpoint. Let's take $100. They said that they have to write down $17.5 billion of their existing assets. That's 10% of their book value. That's using $100 a ton. Well, it only goes a lot higher as the price of carbon goes higher. Well,
wait. What does it mean to write down 17?
So pretend you think you have it's no different than a manufacturing company. Let's say all the stuff in your warehouse of what you think your goods are worth, that's your book value. So if you have, you know, a billion barrels of oil in a project that you're starting and you can pump out over 25 years, or no difference than a car dealer that has, you know, 200 cars on his lot and multiplies by $50,000 a car, that's his book value. So BP came out with the CEO saying, we got to write down $17.5 billion of what value we thought we had at $100 per ton carbon. Okay, well, let's take all the other oil companies. Exxon, our internal numbers show about $25 billion of write-downs. Shell, same thing. So all these oil companies are sitting there going, oh crap, you know, all these pension funds who've invested with us because of our dividend and our value, when you write down, that's a huge significant devaluation.
And when you say write down, it's basically you're taking the value of your company and decreasing it.
Decreasing it. Now what happens on debt covenants? These companies have incredible high debt. So the derivative effect, right, that happens in the bond market, and all the debt covenants get breached because you have to have a certain price to your book value and all these covenants that you can't violate off of your debt. There's a new black swan coming here. So what are these oil companies going to do? They have no choice but to go into the carbon sequestration market, which is a carbon credit market, the offsets, and buy certified credits that can offset that pollution, because it's way cheaper for them to fund the sequestering, the taking out of carbon out of the atmosphere, than to shut down their oil production, right? As we're transitioning from a fossil fuel energy world to a green world, there's something called reality in the middle that we have to do this transition. And without carbon credits, there is no transition.
Would you explain what carbon credits are?
Sure. So one carbon credit is the equivalent of taking 1 ton of carbon dioxide equivalent out of the atmosphere. Okay, and it's certified.
How are the carbon credits created?
You have to have a project, and you have to have something called additionality factor. What are you doing to this project to prevent the deforestation? And by having this carbon credit certified, that you're adding value to the whole system, that you have to be certified. So it's not like you just go to Central Park and say, I'm going to get carbon credits from this. You have to prove there's an additionality factor. So, was it going to be clear-cutted or whatever? So then you take those credits, and then you can sell them to companies like Shell, BP, Exxon. So just to put this into perspective, there's about 200 million tons of carbon credits that are going to be certified this year in 2021. If Shell and Exxon wanted to just offset to meet their new board commitments, like they've been legislated, they have to do this. Just those two companies would purchase over 100%. There's not enough carbon credits. So Larry Fink just came out, and the last time I was on your show, I said the first trillionaire is going to come out of this, the first, unicorn trillion company, and these uber wealthy individuals are going to be the ones who solve this climate issue. Larry Fink is saying it. BlackRock just announced new funds to get into this. It is the new, this is so much bigger than Bitcoin. This is so much bigger than gold, so much bigger than the copper market. In fact, this is going to be bigger than the oil market, which makes up about 5% of global GDP. That's not me saying this. This is the biggest oil company and oil traders in the world who are saying this. It's just starting. Imagine being able to invest in the technology sector, knowing what the internet is. Imagine if everybody told you what the internet was, and we need apps and we need smartphones. That's the government is literally saying we are going to make the price of carbon credits $170 a ton. And we need people to figure out how to do this because we can't do it. And here's the platform, and this is what's happening. It's been laid out by the central bankers, by the governments, and then the big oil companies are going, where can we buy these carbon credits from? How you become uber rich is by solving a problem that the market needs, and that right now is carbon credits.